All right, let's jump into this idea of what is Gavel, what is rules-based automation, and what is the Gavel 7, or what I'm calling the Gavel 7. So we are going to talk about this portion of AI, or sort of traditional AI, which is rules-based automation. So this is the idea, as a lot of you will know from your different expertise and backgrounds, that with rules-based automation, what we're doing is taking a set of rules that we understand and know and coding them or tagging them into documents and workflows with different things like conditional logic, you can make different conditions based on things like jurisdiction, whether somebody has a spouse, whether somebody has multiple shareholders, or whatever conditions or rules that need to be implanted into the documents. That's something that you can do with a tool like Gavel. So that's the role that Gavel plays in the legal, in the legal profession, is this automation tool that allows you as the lawyer to actually take templates and turn them into workflow automations or questionnaires that output these documents with these predefined, predictable rules. So it provides for a lot of consistency and output that you get to a lot of control over. So that's one of the things that I really like about this tool, and just this idea that we are the ones that are the subject matter experts, and we're getting to really put that into and even brand and customize how this is presented to a consumer if you're making client-facing workflows. A lot of people will start with the idea of internal document automation within their firms, and that's completely fine. But we are seeing that trend also towards that productization piece that Suzanne was talking about, and also David and Jose, about how can we offer tools that are consumer facing, but also how can we educate that consumer so that they're using them properly. So I think that these are some of the questions we're going to think about as we walk through what we're talking about today, which I have just sort of termed the Gavel 7 to kind of consolidate, as I mentioned, what the different pieces you might want to think about when you are starting to get into this automation process. Some of you have been automating and doing things for a couple of years. Some of you are newer. But just to help you see the different pieces and the different opportunities with a tool like this. So the 7 different sections we're going to cover, Hayley and I are going to cover, are journey mapping, data repurposing, conditional logic, repeating items, document tagging, customization, and productization. And the second row underneath those different ones that I just mentioned is something that I'm calling a key question that helps us to kind of get our mindset right for what that section is talking about. So for example, with journey mapping, we're asking the key question, what am I optimizing for? So this could be, for example, that you are optimizing for the client's experience and internally for the lawyer or paralegal's experience as they're preparing documents for the client. So on both sides, both externally and internally, we're trying to optimize that process throughout the different touch points that we encounter as we kind of run through this parallel experience. The section down below that in this kind of A to Z spiral, I'll show what that looks like on a Zoom whiteboard in just a second, but it's just to serve as sort of a memory aid in this flow. And my dream in the next couple of weeks is to finish a little mini course that has exercises for you to kind of go through for each of these modules. So when that's ready, I can send that out to you. Data repurposing, our key question will be, can I reuse data that I already have? I love this question because often we should be thinking about where are the different points that somebody is entering information in our process, and then how can we make it to where nobody ever has to retype something that we already have stored, right? We should always be able to take information that's already been given to us and put it somewhere else, put it into a different document, have it added somewhere else so that people aren't typing information over and over again. And we aren't, as the internal process, and the clients themselves aren't ever giving us information that we should already have. So that's the key question for that second section. Conditional logic is the question of like, what does something hinge on? So I'll give you an example of 3 different hinges for one of my favorite examples around a Veterans Affairs example for something called a Specially Adapted Housing Grant. Repeating items is something that could be 0. So somebody could have no children, or they could have 5 children, or they could have 100 children. They could have anything from 0 to whatever number that we don't know. So that's something that we'll go over under repeating items. Document tagging will be around, are we using Word documents, PDF documents, both? What are some of the differences and similarities in the process of automating those different types of documents? Customization, the key question here is, can I make it match my brand? So how can we make it to where there's a really seamless visual experience and aesthetic when a customer or client is going through the process of working with us? So that could be around having your logo on your workflows. That could be matching your font style to your website. That could be the different, hex codes and colors that you have. So how can we really make it to where there's a seamless and optimized experience in that way as well? And then the productization question is, what can I offer at scale? Because as we all know, as lawyers, we're all, our time is limited. We're all doing so many different things. So how can we increase our revenue and be able to serve more people by offering a legal product, such as what Suzanne mentioned for her own as well? So let's go into what this would look like from the perspective of, actually, I'm going to share the whiteboard first for the first section around the journey mapping. So a lot of people on this call obviously have different things that they're doing. So this isn't going to necessarily be tracking exactly the same the way that I have this set up for this example, but it's more the idea of you thinking about who you're trying to optimize the process for and what steps they might go through in order to achieve their ultimate goal or outcome. So for example, a lot of people might consider like the process of working with someone, a client, as someone engages me for my services and I deliver those services, and then that's it. But actually, we have to start the process a lot farther back. Point A actually starts all the way from them being a new lead and trying to discover you as a firm or as a legal product or whatever else. So they might start with something like asking a friend, doing a keyword search, or whatever else. So we want to position ourselves on the other side of that with something like SEO optimization or sponsored ads, or making sure that we're appearing in Facebook groups where they might appear because they trust that source of information. So we want to be thinking about all the way from the beginning, how might we use different tools, automation tools and otherwise, to grab or create a lead magnet that pulls someone from the whole world into our world, which would be something like our website, right? So the idea here is that we're also not only going from A to B, but we want to take someone all the way from A to their ultimate outcome, their ultimate desired outcome, which gives us the opportunity to think about other upsell opportunities outside of what we were originally contracted for. So this is just a visual of how my mind conceptualizes how the client's journey might be different from our journey, but they track through different key points. And along the way, we're kind of ping-ponging back and forth with different touch points through that process. So let's say, for example, this is the client's traditional journey doing, let's say, an hourly billing or flat fee structure with a traditional lawyer. You might have them start with a keyword search. We on our side have set it up so that they can be taken from Google or Bing to our particular website. So we need to have content there, like marketing content or lead magnets that they can engage with in order to trust us that we're the experts in that field. And then we want to have something that calls them to action. So they book a consultation with us. That would be something like a Calendly or a HubSpot, any kind of thing that has a booking calendar that they can use. So you can see how, like, on either side of the coin, we have something that we need to have in place to meet them where they are. For them to sign the agreement and we want to engage the client. For them to pay, we need to have that set up. All these different additional services, we want to be able to be in a position where we have something like tiered services or the next step in their journey. So for example, you might have an automated sequence that goes out after 6 months to remind them that the next step in this process would be to, go through this, file this other paperwork, or whatever the next step of something might be in the ultimate desired outcome, right? So as I mentioned, in your particular circumstance, this might look a little bit different, but I want you to just think of this more openly as there is always going to be someone who we're trying to help, and what we're doing internally to meet them where they are at each point along the journey, and thinking about how we might be able to optimize that process for them. Okay, so let's take off this one here and close this whiteboard. I'm still getting used to whiteboards, if I'm being honest. They're a little bit tricky. Okay, so that is just that idea of journey mapping. So I hope that made a little bit of sense around just thinking about what we're optimizing for. And now we want to think about having that initial, whatever that initial contact point be, something that we could repurpose that data later on. So kind of having it serve a couple of different purposes. For example, serving as a lead magnet as well as a lead qualification tool, letting us know or kicking people out who may not be a good fit for us, versus letting people go all the way through this workflow if they might be a good candidate to work with us. At the same time as serving as client intake, so that we can repurpose that information to do something like prepare an engagement agreement. So let's see what that would look like in real time. So this example would be if we are a firm that specializes in US veteran law. We have made it to where, on Google, our search appears when they search for something around disabled veterans and benefits, that our blog would appear first. So we're tracking kind of along that path. And then we have, let's say, a blog here where somebody is able to see if they might be eligible for this particular type of grant in just a few questions. So in this particular grant, they can get up to $117,000 to adapt their home to accommodate for the disability. So in this case, there are 3 hinges or conditions that must be met in order to qualify. They need to have a service-connected disability. They need to be using the grant money to buy, build, or change their permanent home, and they need to own or will own the home. So those are the 3 hinges or conditions, as you kind of saw in that key question as well. So the first thing we want to ask them is, do you have one of the following service-connected disabilities? If they don't have any of these, then we want to actually kick them out of this workflow, because they need to have all 3 conditions met in order to qualify. So what we can do is give them this letter letting them know, based on their answers, they likely may not be eligible for this type of grant because you need to have these in order to qualify. They also receive an email with this decision letter to kind of make it to where if they navigate away from this page, they still have it in their inbox. Now, let's say that they answer anything else, because any of these will qualify them. Let's see what happens instead. So now they see a different page. So this is an example of page logic, where based on their answer, one person was directed past this page. And in this example, they are seeing a couple more questions. And there are these 2 other hinges that we want to ask them about. The first one being around how they're going to use the grant money, and the second one around whether they own or will own the home. So if the person says no, we won't see that next question, because that has logic on the back end attached to it saying, only show this question if the answer to the question about how they're using the grant money is yes. So that's that rule-based language that we were talking about in the beginning, about we are the ones who know what the rules should be or what the conditions should be. So we can actually attach those rules to different pages, to different questions, and to different clauses and sections and words in our documents based on the answers here. So in this one, if they say no and they continue, they should still be kicked out and be told that they will likely not qualify because they don't meet one of the 3 conditions that must be met. So based on your answers, you may not be eligible, but now we don't see those bullet points anymore. We see a completely new reason. You need to be using the grant money for these reasons to qualify. So this is the idea that we're using one embedded workflow. We don't have to necessarily do it exactly this way, but just to give you some ideas of how you might conceptualize or think about how a workflow could be used for multiple things. So this whole thing right here is a Gavel workflow that I created to serve as a lead magnet, a lead qualifier, and an intake form. So I'll show you where this information gets stored in a minute, but let's just see when somebody is successful. So they put in their information. Let's say they say yes and yes. In this case, we want to let them know that they likely will qualify, and or at least that they're eligible to qualify, and we'd love to talk to them. So in this example, based on their answers, they may be eligible for this type of grant, and we'd love to meet with them to discuss. And they're given a link to book a time with our team. So that's how we can start to push people down different branches of logic based on their answers, so that we're only asking people to work with us who would be the most likely candidate to work with us. They'd be most qualified. So this is what Gavel looks like if you have never seen an account before. It looks like this. And essentially what we're doing on this page, this is the dashboard. This is where we can see the different workflows that we've built, and we can go into what's called the data manager. So in the next section, in this section around data repurposing, that's the idea that we were able to use that workflow to go through that process of intaking some of that information, qualifying them as a lead, bringing them to our website, but also we can see that information that they entered here in our data manager. So let's say I go into the workflow to see how many times it's run, who ran it, whether they were logged in or not. I can open the session to see what their answers were or continue the workflow. And in this case, I can see that this person answered true and true. So meaning that they do have a service-connected disability, they are going to be using the grant money to buy, build, or change the permanent home, and they do own or they will own the home. So in this case, what we can do is after we had them book a time with us, we had our initial consultation, we've gone through our conflicts checks, and we're ready for them to become a client with us, and we're ready to engage them. That's where that piece around data repurposing comes, because all I have to do is check the mark of where I want to, like which session I want to repurpose. I can say, push this into another workflow. In this case, I want to push it into the limited scope engagement agreement because we want to engage them as a client. And then all of the information that they've already entered, such as their prefix, their first name, their last name, their email address, mailing address, all of that is automatically pushed through. And I just need to fill in any information that wasn't yet collected. So for example, what services will be included in this particular representation. So I'm going to prepare this application. And also we talked about me doing their statutory power of attorney as well. Then I can also put in what's excluded from this particular representation. And this is an example of a repeating item. So I can say, we're not going to do any appeals and we're not going to do any litigation. And then we can continue, review our answers, and we'll see the limited scope engagement agreement output at the end. We can review it before we submit it for signing. It's going to be formatted the same way every single time because of that piece around the rules-based automation, being that we have put in that every single time it should be consistently output this way in this format. And so it's going to be customized for that particular client. And what we can do then is also submit that for DocuSign signature by saying submit for signing. So I want to pause here to give a moment to Hayley to be able to go over an example as well of this idea of taking data that already exists, moving it around in different ways in different contexts.
Awesome. So I'll share my screen now. It's very similar to everything that Brittany was just describing, but so as you see the dashboard here, but in this example, I'll show you something that we recently built. And like Brittany mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, a lot of the firms that we work with, they first bring us on board in order to automate their internal documents, whether that's for their junior associates or their paralegals to be able to fill out. But then their end goal is essentially to be able to productize it. So we work with a lot of general business firms, estate planning firms, litigation firms, but we're seeing this a lot with estate planning and general business. So just an example here, the PJ Power Hour, that's the one I'll run. So this will just be a basic intake form, and it's only going to ask for the basic information of the client that's going to be filling it out. Hopefully this loads. Sometimes my Wi-Fi is a bit off. It's not anything on Gavel, so we'll just let this take one moment. Let's see.
I find that always happens when I'm trying to demonstrate something.
I know, it's like
gonna
just
not work for me.
So let me see. If not, I do have a recent session that I can open via the data manager that I can just show you that there, what it looks like. Let's see if that is gonna be nicer to us. Should be working. Let's see. Sorry about this, guys.
No worries. Maybe while it's loading, I can kind of speak to a couple of other pieces first, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, for sure. No, that's perfect. No worries. So while she is kind of looking at that, I'm going to pull back up the Gavel 7 to just kind of like orient us of where we are now. So we've talked about journey mapping. We've talked about data repurposing. How can I reuse data that I already have stored? Another thing there is around integration. So one thing you could do as well is if you are like, well, I wouldn't store all of my data in Gavel. Maybe I have a legal practice management software or a client relationship management software. Then what you can do is connect these either through a native integration. So we already have Clio. As you can see, we can already submit for signing directly through DocuSign. We also have a Stripe integration. So if it's not native to us, you can also use Zapier or Make or some kind of connector that would connect your, let's say, MyCase or Practice Panther or Locus or whatever else to Gavel so that you can have them talk to each other. The other piece that we looked at is conditional logic. So we talked about those 3 hinges for the one that I was showing you, where depending on the answer, they're going to have a different outcome. And then I can also show you when we get to document tagging, what that looks like for each of your documents, like how you would actually implement that logic in a document. As you saw, the document would hide or show different bullet points, different reasons for why they don't qualify. And that's really easy to do with the no code word add-in. How are you doing, Hayley?
It's just not loading at all.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. I just asked my husband to log off of his computer to try to free up some
Get
Wi-Fi.
out of here.
Yeah, legit. But
No worries.
sorry, I'll let you know as soon as it's out.
No worries, sounds good. So in that case, I'm going to move on to the repeating item. So let's say, for example, that you need to prepare a receipt of distribution for probate. So somebody's received a distribution and we need to have their receipt. Let's say this one is an example from Arkansas. So we have multiple people. We don't know how many from 0 to how many of the different people who are going to receive a distribution. And we want them to be able to, we want to be able to prepare different versions of this for each individual recipient of this distribution. So I've created just an example here where we have the decedent's information and the representative's information, the case and court information, such as the county and the state, division number or case number. So you would just adapt that as needed. Let's say that Hayley here, I'm going to put Hayley Leviashvili Torres.
That's what I was putting in mind too.
You're going to get $5,000. And then I am going to receive, I'm going to say $2,000. And then let's say we have, I don't know, like Mark Ballister. That's just a totally made up name, and they're going to get $1,000. That's just to show, like, so that's how a repeating item would work. You can just add. You could also make it to where they have shown on different pages, or there's a question that's asked at the beginning, such as, and a continuation question. So you'd say, like, do you have any children? And then they say yes, and then they can enter in that information. Or if they say no, they're going to skip past the repeating item question. So you can really tailor it to the situation. And that's what I really love about this process, is that you're really able to customize how this comes out and how it looks. So we just answered a couple questions here, and it's going to process and it's going to generate different separate documents for each of these different people with their particular amount of distribution. So Hayley's will show her name. So you can see receipt of distribution for Hayley. This one is for me, and then this one is for our made up person. And then when we look at their specific information, we can see that it's their name that was entered here, their amount that was entered here, and the date automatically populates for us. Same thing for Brittany's, for mine. I get $2,000 and here's my name here. And all we had to do was just fill out that information very quickly, and it's populating all of those documents for them. And the funny thing about this particular template, it was shared with me by one of our customers. And the way that they did it before was, because what I think about a lot is people are solving problems in some way, and we're just trying to help speed up that process and provide a solution. And the way that they were doing it was they would just kind of like have one document that they would keep sort of like copy and pasting the different like template just a bunch of times, and then going through and like manually just changing all the different pieces. So it just shows you that you can actually just do this so much faster and save a lot of time by using a tool like this. So that's an example of a repeating item. And then I wanted to go into a little bit of how would you actually tag these documents. So if you see here, there's Blueprint, Word add-in, and PDF tagger. So when we're talking about Blueprint, this is a feature with AI capabilities as well. So this is powered by generative AI. And essentially, let's say that you have a template like this that you want to automate, but you don't want to have to like individually go through and create different questions for each of these different ones, because maybe that's a little bit time consuming. So what we've done is made it to where all you have to do is go into your dashboard, say new workflow, choose start with documents, and then you just take your template and you just drop it into here. Once you do and you say next, you'll give it a name, and then it's going to look like this, where it's recognizing the different sections of this document where you might want to automate. Let's go ahead and have a question from David.
Brittany, I have a question. For example, in the firms here, they do a lot of MMA, or the young guys that would be willing to use a automation system. Their MMAs are huge. It's good, 100 pages, contracts and all that. What would be a good way to do or to propose an automation for those type of documents? Because they say none of the MMAs are the same.
Right.
How can we, like they say it won't help me because they're so big, they're so changing,
Like
that
nuanced.
yeah.
I think this brings up a lot of great questions. I think there's two kind of pieces that I would like to pull out here. The first is the question of like, are there things that you shouldn't automate? And I think that the answer is yes. I'm not sure that this is the right answer to that question, but just that like sometimes there are things that there's a reason why you wouldn't automate it, right? So like, for example, not in that same context, but there was somebody who was saying that they chose to continue to have like a phone number available, and they did delegate it, but they didn't really automate the process of like having somebody answer the phone, because they were actually seeing that they got higher like ratings and reviews on Google if they didn't like force someone to only interact with like a web page or a chat bot or something. They wanted to actually talk to a human. So that's a good example of like something that you would not automate for a particular reason. And then the other thing I would say is around like long documents with lots of different nuances and how you would best go about doing that. So I've actually done documents for people that are like 80 pages long. And a lot of the time, there's a lot of stuff that will repeat. So for example, you'd have like, well, obviously there's also definitions. So like maybe you put the person's name once, and then, you'd say like, or the company's name once, and then all through that document it's still company name. But yeah, so I think that there's aspects that can be automated, even if it's a long document with nuanced elements. I think you can still find places that would benefit. So I would say that. And then the other thing would be around for the pieces that are like really nuanced or really need like a pass through. There's kind of two ways you could do that. One is you could set it up to where there's a question, like a text area question, for example, somewhere that would ask you like, put in whatever nuanced thing that you would want to say here. And then have that be a kind of a, like a bookmark in the document that makes it to where whatever you've said there goes directly into that document. So it's just the same as, or similar to actually going into the document and typing it in, if that makes sense. But in this case, you're getting the other pieces automated along the way. And then the other thing I would say is you could also do it to where you use Gavel to automate the pieces that would be rules-based or repetitive. And then when it outputs, have it output as a Word document, and then you could go through and make whatever additional changes you want. So I feel like there's a balance there, which is like, which elements of it are hyper like niche that need to be very bespoke to that transaction. And then how could you think about automating the pieces that can be automated and then leaving room for places that need more like individual experience, like expertise in that section. Does that make sense or answer the question?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
It's
I think
just
that's a good question.
getting them to understand that you can save them 5 minutes of their time or 10 minutes of their time,
Right.
and not make mistakes of I guess erasing the wrong company
Right.
or putting the wrong company's name, you know?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
So
perfect.
yeah, I think that kind of goes to what we were saying about automating the pieces that you already have, like data repurposing, for example, or yeah, just like just differentiating between the pieces that can be automated because they repeat a lot, or you don't want to make the mistake of entering something wrong, and then leaving room open for places where you might want to have a little bit more eyes on it, individual bespoke attention. How are you doing,
Perfect.
Hayley? Yeah, of course. Thanks for the question.
It's like my Zoom is working, but my
But everything
web
else.
page, everything else is not working. But just
Okay.
to add on to what you were saying, I was gonna say I work with the estate planning clients I work with. I think that like Brittany said, you can automate the things that can be automated, like simple will plans or things like that. But then when you have more advanced things going on, you can still automate the intake process and things like that. But if it's like, let's say it's a $200 million estate and they need actual eyes on the documents or like help with trust funding, things like that, that's where you can add in the human element. I always tell people that automation is amazing and it can save a lot of time and it's super efficient in all of your processes, but always having the human touch when it comes to your clients. And I think that Suzanne was talking about this with her products. It's like a lot of people still need some sort of hand holding. So I think just having that service as an add-on to your automation is always, you can't go wrong with it. That just comes into the question of scalability, but it's just an added-on service like what Hello Divorce did. So a lot of different ways you can automate and also not automate.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I did want to point out that you actually can do some quite complex conditions and what I used to say is when I was doing more of like education and I wasn't a full-time employee with Gavel, I used to try to like put roller coasters and backflips into the system to like try to break it or like see how far I could take it, and how many conditions I could make be there. So to show you like how you might do something like that is, let's say that you want this whole section to only show if the answer to the first question is none, like none of the above. So you would go into our Gavel Word add-in. So you just get this from the add-in store by like just searching for Gavel. And then you would just, when you sign into it, you would go into whatever workflow you're working on. In this case, this is associated with this particular workflow. And then you can add conditions like only show this entire section when the answer to the first question is none of the above. And then you can just insert that condition and it's going to do all the coding for you. And then you could have this whole other section, for example, only show if how using the grant money is or is not some condition such as yes, and or this other condition such as, what was the first one I did? Grant money. Let me do own home, yes or no, is no. You know what I mean? So you can kind of layer on the logic as much as you need to, and then all you need to do is insert that condition. And so that's really just to show, like, even if you are highly nuanced in your documents, you can get very granular around what should show and what should hide in different circumstances. But you just need to know what those rules are in order to implement them into the document. You can do the same thing with PDF documents as well, where you're going in and adding different conditions. I have this one example of this like small estate affidavit where it's going to give you the answers to some different questions. This is the Gavel blueprint where it's suggesting the different questions that you might ask for the different aspects and areas that are like fillable in this PDF. And then you would just draft the workflow. And then when you want to like make any changes, you can actually just go into, let me show you what that looks like here. We can go to this one just to show you one that's already done. So when you want to use a PDF document and tag or associate the questions and the answers to where it is in the document, you just say tag, and then you just select a field, and then say sort of like insert conditional value or insert a variable. And then you just choose from there. So it's very like, you just need to know what the rules are and what information you want to go where. And then you're able to do that using these different sort of no code automated tools. So that's really helpful. Okay. So we've talked about journey mapping, data repurposing, conditional logic, repeating items, document tagging. So let's cover these last two pieces around customization and productization. As we have only not that much left of our time. So when we talk about customization, I'm talking about the ability to make the workflows look like your brand or your company's logos and your company's fonts in different colors. A really cool tool that one of our Gavel experts made is called the Gavel Custom CSS Generator. And I can put this in the chat to make sure you all can access it for free as well. So essentially, this is just making it to where when we want to create to update the default CSS. So the default CSS would look like this, for example, where it's like purple and it's a certain font. If you want to add your own element to it, you can just say like, I don't want to have a header. I want to have the background color be this crazy black color. I'm just doing that one so that you can see it better. But you can see how you can just go through and just select what you want something to be. And then when you're ready, you just create that module and then you're good to go. So I think that is the biggest piece I wanted to show for the customization, is that you do have the ability to add your own styles. You can also change the language. So if you needed it to be in a different language, you just go into the workflow and then go under settings, and then you could change the language. I know somebody who wanted to create Japanese workflows, which was really cool. And then the productization piece is going to be really a lot of what Suzanne is doing too, and also David and Jose, where we're talking about how can we offer something at scale that people could consume in large numbers without us having to do extra work. So we set it up once and then they can run it as many times as they need to. And as many people can do that as well. So that's the idea or key question of what can I offer at scale? Hayley mentioned this idea of Hello Divorce, but there are many other companies that are doing this and building these different legal products on Gavel. And so here's a couple of examples. DOS is a really good example because they're making a lot of money. They're doing really well. They are, there's like kind of a marketplace style a la carte menu. So they do like mortgage loan documents. So it's more of a B2B kind of exchange. So the company would go in and they would purchase the package for like $399. And then they just go through, complete their information for the particular transaction, and then out pop the documents. With Counsel Your Docs, that's on creating a shareholder agreement for people based in Ontario. And then we can also see this in the access to justice space. A lot of people on this call as well are talking about like, how can we make things more affordable for the average consumer? And I think that's the core kind of goal of Gavel, and Dorna specifically, our CEO and founder as well, is just the idea of like, how can we make access to the law universal? And we're doing that by putting the tool of how to automate that process in the hands of the subject matter experts, so that they're able to actually create those tools and offer them at a more affordable price than a billable hour model would afford you to do that. Because I know I have some school debt that I need to cover, so I'm not able to offer my services, you know, as a lawyer for free. But how can I offer it at scale at a reduced rate? So that's the kind of different question we're going for now. And I think H&J Tech was able to do that really well during COVID, because they were able to create a Gavel workflow very quickly, and they were able to put it into the market, and they were able to serve 40,000 tenants in 2 months, and they were able to help them get eviction relief during COVID. So it's just a really interesting example of how automation can help a lot of people. And there was only this short time where they had to actually build the tool itself. So I want to give Hayley a minute to talk a little bit about gigLAW and how gigLAW can help in this process. And then we can start to wrap up, because we only have about 3 minutes left. So Hayley, do you want to share a little
I'll
bit?
go quick, yeah, so we can get the questions in. I apologize to everyone for not being able to show what we do, but essentially what we do for all of our Gavel clients is we do end-to-end builds. So we create your questionnaire, we go through the questionnaire with you to make sure it's running exactly how you want it. All the questions are in there as you want it. We do all the tagging in the back end. I personally came to Gavel with no coding experience at all. I still don't have coding experience, but I'm able to code the documents through Gavel. And so then once that's done, we tag all the documents and we test through every single document that we tag to make sure each different scenario is, you know, the documents are populating as they should be. It's me, and then I have a couple of team members who we have trained. I have low cost and also high cost. The lower costs are people who are law students or paralegals who are interested in legal tech. And then the higher costs are just like the coders who actually know coding and they're really experts and they can do the advanced stuff. There's a lot of advanced features that Gavel can do, and like Brittany was saying, you can really make it as granular as you want. And so if you have a vision for what you want automated, likely Gavel can get that done, and if not, you can put it on their wish list and they usually bump it up and can get it done. But yeah, gigLAW is just a platform. Outside of Gavel, we provide law firms with virtual legal assistants. So in a pairing model, so we send you the resumes of people based on the profile you need. And then also the direct model where you work with me or one of my account managers on specific tasks and projects that you need. So we're all around. We have a lot of different buckets that we work in, and but Gavel is definitely our favorite partner and the only company that we work with for automation needs. But that's the quick spiel, and now we can dive into the questions that anyone might have about the specific product.
Amazing. That's super helpful. And I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know we're kind of at time. So what I want to do is just put up our information. If you want to reach out to me or to Hayley, you can reach out to me directly with questions at Brittany@gavel.io. And then you can also reach out to Hayley at Hayley@giglaw.co. And then here are our respective places where you can, on Gavel, you can actually start a free trial. And then if you want to reach out to Hayley about your specific circumstance, you can do that as well. All right, that's us at time. So I'm gonna maybe wrap us up. If you have a question and you want to stay on, you're welcome to, but I'm going to stop the recording now.